June 22nd, 1944, 16:47 hours. First Lieutenant Frank Tachovsky crouched behind a coral outcropping on the Pololu mountain road, Saipan, watching a Japanese Type 95 Ha-Go light tank grind up the steep incline toward the regimental command post 200 meters upslope. The tank weighed 7.4 tons. Its 37mm main gun traversed slowly left to right, searching. Its 12mm frontal armor gleamed dull gray in the late afternoon light. Behind that armor sat 3 Japanese crewmen who did not know they were about to be killed by a weapon that had been stolen 4 days earlier from an army ordnance depot. Tachovsky was 29 years old, from New Brighton, Pennsylvania, Marine Service number 0-14596. The M1A 12.36-inch rocket launcher he held weighed 7.6 kilograms loaded. Effective range 300 meters. Armor penetration 90 to 100 millimeters, more than enough to punch through the Ha-Go's hull. The bazooka had not been issued to Tachovsky's platoon. It had been acquired by what Marines called marine methods, which meant theft, which meant survival. The command post behind him held 40 members of his scout sniper platoon, plus regimental staff. The Ha-Go's main gun could obliterate that position in 6 rounds. Tachovsky shouldered the bazooka. The tube pressed cold against his cheek despite the 84-degree heat and 78% humidity. His finger found the trigger. The Ha-Go commander's hatch was open. A Japanese officer stood exposed from the waist up, directing the advance. Tachovsky aimed not at the commander, but at the tank's turret ring, the junction between hull and turret where armor was thinnest. He fired. The rocket left the tube with a metallic whoosh and crossed 180 meters in 1.2 seconds. It struck the turret ring and detonated. The shaped charge punched through 12 millimeters of steel and sent a jet of molten copper into the crew compartment. The Ha-Go shuddered, stopped, began to burn. The commander collapsed into the hatch. No one emerged. 5 months earlier, command had called Tachovsky's recruitment plan insane. January 11th, 1944, Parker Ranch, Territory of Hawaii. The 6th Marine Regiment had been training for 3 months in preparation for the next island assault in the Central Pacific. Intelligence said the target was Saipan, part of the Mariana Islands, 1,529 feet of volcanic rock and dense jungle, 1,270 miles south of Tokyo. The Japanese had 29,000 troops on Saipan. They had 90 tanks from the 9th Tank Regiment. They had cave fortifications the Marines had never seen before. Division Command needed a scout sniper platoon, men who could operate independently behind enemy lines, map fortifications, eliminate snipers, clear bypassed positions. Standard operating procedure called for recruiting expert marksmen with clean service records and high physical fitness scores. Tachovsky proposed recruiting Marines from the brig. The colonel in charge of the 6th Marines stared at him. Tachovsky explained his reasoning. Marines ended up in the brig for 2 reasons. Some violated regulations because they were incompetent or cowardly. Others violated regulations because they were aggressive and unwilling to follow orders that made no tactical sense. Tachovsky wanted the second type. He wanted Marines who had been in fights. Not the Marines who lost fights and ended up in the infirmary. The Marines who won fights and ended up in the brig. He wanted rule breakers who could think independently in situations where following doctrine meant death. The colonel asked how Tachovsky planned to identify such men. Tachovsky said he would review battalion commanders' record books and look for disciplinary entries combined with combat effectiveness reports. Men who had brig time but also had successful patrol records. Men who had been written up for insubordination but had also been recommended for promotion. The colonel gave Tachovsky 2 weeks to recruit and 3 months to train. If the platoon failed to meet standards, Tachovsky would face court-martial for wasting Marine Corps time and resources. Tachovsky recruited 40 Marines. Corporal Robert Gene Smots from the Osage Nation Reservation in Hominy, Oklahoma, had grown up hunting and trapping. He had spent 6 days in the brig for striking a sergeant who had ordered him to remain in position during a Japanese counterattack on Guadalcanal. Smots had disobeyed, advanced alone, killed 3 Japanese soldiers with a knife, and saved his squad. The sergeant had him arrested anyway. PFC William Emmerich, called Wild Bill, had been in the brig 4 times for fighting. He had also killed 11 Japanese soldiers on Tarawa. Sergeant Donald L. Evans had brig time for stealing rations from a supply depot to feed his underweight squad. PFC Jesus Orozco, the Hispanic kid with the brilliant smile, had been arrested for threatening an officer who had denied his request to recover a dead Marine's body under fire. Orozco had recovered the body anyway. Training began January 18th. Tachovsky taught them what the Marine Corps did not teach: silent killing. Piano wire garrotes with wooden handles, knife techniques for cutting the carotid artery from behind, hand-to-hand methods for breaking necks without making sound. Scout sniper doctrine emphasized shooting, but shooting made noise and noise revealed position. Tachovsky wanted his men capable of killing without firing a round. He also trained them on the Springfield Model 1903 rifle with Unertl scope. The rifle weighed 8.7 pounds unscoped. The Unertl added magnification but also weight. Effective range 800 meters with proper conditions. Bolt action 5-round stripper clip. The rifle was old, a World War I design, but accurate. By May, the 40 Thieves, as they called themselves, could hit man-sized targets at 600 meters consistently. They could move through jungle terrain without sound. They could kill sentries without alerting nearby positions. Division command remained skeptical. The Marines in the platoon had combined brig time totaling 247 days. 7 had been recommended for court-martial before Tachovsky intervened. Battalion commanders called them criminals. Tachovsky called them effective. June 15th, 1944, 08:12 hours. The 40 Thieves landed on Saipan's southwest coast with the 6th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division. The beach was 200 meters of coral sand under withering Japanese machine gun fire. The first day produced 3,500 Marine casualties. The 40 Thieves lost no men. They moved inland immediately, bypassing Japanese positions to scout Mount Tapochau, the volcanic peak dominating the island's center. By nightfall, they had mapped 12 machine gun nests and 3 mortar positions. The information allowed artillery to destroy 7 positions before dawn. Command said nothing about the platoon's effectiveness. The skepticism remained. June 18th. Tachovsky led a patrol into Garapan, Saipan's capital city on the western coast. Naval bombardment had leveled most structures. The Japanese had evacuated the civilian population but maintained sniper positions in remaining buildings. The 40 Thieves were the first American troops to enter Garapan. They moved through rubble-filled streets using the Unertl scoped Springfields to engage Japanese soldiers visible on Tipo Pale, the mountain road winding up from the city. Japanese troops were descending the road on bicycles, trying to reinforce positions to the south. The Springfields cracked methodically. 63 Japanese soldiers fell from bicycles or collapsed running. The patrol returned with intelligence on Japanese troop movements and also with stolen supplies from a looted general store, fabric, canned food, sake. The theft violated regulations. Command chose not to prosecute. The intelligence was too valuable. June 21st. Division Command issued orders for the 6th Marines to clear Japanese positions along the Pololu mountain road. Intelligence reported machine gun nests dug into the volcanic rock, covering approaches from 3 angles. Standard infantry assault would cost 40% casualties. Tachovsky's platoon would scout the positions first, identify firing lanes, locate blind spots for the assault. The 40 Thieves moved out at 05:30 on June 22nd. 06:47 hours. The patrol reached the lower slopes of Pololu. The terrain was steep, jungle vegetation thick enough to limit visibility to 30 meters. Sergeant Donald Evans led the point element, 10 men moving in single file. Tachovsky followed 50 meters back with the main body. At 07:12, Evans triggered the ambush. 4 Japanese Type 92 machine guns opened fire simultaneously from concealed positions. The 7.7mm rounds came from 3 directions. Evans died in the first burst. 7 other Marines in the point element went down in 12 seconds. The volume of fire was extraordinary. The Japanese had positioned their guns with overlapping fields of fire. There was no cover. The coral rock prevented digging. The Marines could only press themselves flat and hope the bullets passed overhead. Tachovsky assessed the situation. His point element was pinned and taking casualties. The main body could not advance without being destroyed. Retreat was possible, but would leave wounded Marines behind. He made his decision. He pulled the main body back 200 meters and called for artillery. Naval gunfire support arrived at 08:09. The 5-inch shells walked up the slope, impacting 20 meters in front of the Japanese positions, then 10 meters, then directly on target. The shelling lasted 17 minutes. At 08:26, Tachovsky led the main body forward. The Japanese machine gun positions were destroyed. Evans was dead. Wild Bill Emmerich was critically wounded, gut shot, evacuated later that morning. 3 other Marines died before the corpsmen reached them. The ambush had been perfect. The Japanese had known the Marines were coming. Tachovsky realized the implications. The Japanese were tracking American patrol patterns. They knew where scouts went and when. Every future patrol would face similar ambushes unless tactics changed. He pulled the 40 Thieves back to the regimental command post at 10:15 hours to report and regroup. The command post was located on high ground overlooking the Pololu Road, protected by a perimeter of Marine infantry and a 50 caliber machine gun position. Tachovsky debriefed the regimental commander on the ambush. The commander acknowledged the casualties and ordered Tachovsky to rest his men for 24 hours before resuming operations. At 16:47, the Japanese counterattacked. The Type 95 Ha-Go came up the Pololu Road alone, no infantry support, which meant either desperation or calculated sacrifice. The tank's commander stood exposed in the hatch, directing the advance toward the command post. Marine riflemen fired at the tank from the perimeter. M1 Garand rounds sparked off the armor and did nothing. The .50 caliber machine gun engaged at 300 meters. The rounds struck the frontal armor and ricocheted. The Ha-Go's 37mm main gun traversed toward the machine gun position and fired. The high explosive round killed the gun crew and destroyed the weapon. The tank continued advancing. Tachovsky had been cleaning his Springfield when the firing started. He dropped the rifle and ran to the equipment cache where the 40 thieves stored their required supplies. The M1A1 bazooka was there, wrapped in canvas. Tachovsky had stolen it from an army ordnance depot 4 days after landing on Saipan. The theft had been straightforward. The depot was poorly guarded. Tachovsky had simply walked in, found the weapons cache, taken the bazooka and 6 rockets, walked out. No one had stopped him. He loaded the bazooka, chambered a rocket, moved to the coral outcropping that provided the best angle on the approaching tank. The Ha-Go was 180 meters downslope. Its frontal armor was 12 millimeters thick, angled at 15 degrees. The turret armor was also 12 millimeters. The turret ring, where the turret connected to the hull, was the weak point. Tachovsky aimed at the ring. He fired. The rocket's shaped charge warhead contained 240 grams of composition B explosive. Upon impact, the charge detonated and formed a jet of molten copper moving at 8,000 meters per second. The jet penetrated the turret ring and entered the crew compartment. The interior of the Ha-Go became an inferno. The tank commander collapsed into the hatch. The tank stopped moving. Flames rose from the open hatch. No crew members escaped. Sergeant Al Juncker, watching from the command post, later told Tachovsky's son Joseph that everyone at the command post would have died if Tachovsky had not fired that rocket. The tank burned for 40 minutes. Japanese infantry never materialized. The counterattack had been a single tank, probably a last-ditch effort by a crew that knew Saipan was lost. By late June, American forces controlled most of the island. Japanese defenders were being pushed into the northern mountains. The 9th Tank Regiment had started the battle with 48 tanks. Most had been destroyed in the massive June 16th counterattack, when 44 Japanese tanks charged Marine positions at dawn and were annihilated by bazookas, Shermans, and naval gunfire. The Ha-Go that Tachovsky destroyed was likely one of the last operational Japanese tanks on Saipan. The regimental commander asked Tachovsky where he had obtained the bazooka. Tachovsky explained it had been acquired by marine methods. The commander asked for clarification. Tachovsky said it had been stolen. The commander asked if Tachovsky intended to return it. Tachovsky said no. The 40 thieves needed it for future operations. The commander closed the discussion by noting that the bazooka's destruction of the Ha-Go had saved the command post, and that further investigation into the weapon's provenance would serve no tactical purpose. The 40 thieves continued operations through July 9th, when Saipan was declared secured. They operated behind Japanese lines continuously, scouting positions, eliminating snipers, clearing bypassed caves. The platoon suffered casualties. Donald Evans dead on June 22nd. Wild Bill Emmerich evacuated with critical wounds. 3 others killed in various engagements. But the 40 thieves killed far more. They mapped enemy positions that allowed artillery to destroy fortifications before infantry assaults. They eliminated Japanese snipers who had killed dozens of Marines. They cleared machine gun nests that would have cost hundreds of casualties to neutralize by conventional methods. In December 1944, Leatherneck Magazine published an article by Marine combat correspondent Vic Kalman. The article was titled Tachovsky's Terrors. Kalman wrote, "Some of the craziest, fiercest, most lovable Marines on Saipan are in the Scout Sniper Platoon under the command of First Lieutenant Frank Tachovsky, 29, of New Brighton, Pennsylvania." The article described the 40 Thieves operations in detail: the stolen bazooka, the bicycle patrol in Garapan, the improvised weapons, buckets filled with TNT and rusty nails, Molotov cocktails, piano wire garrotes. The article did not mention that Tachovsky had recruited every man in the platoon from the brig. Command had decided that detail was unnecessary for public consumption. After Saipan, the 4th Marine Division issued a recommendation that all infantry regiments in the Pacific Theatre establish scout sniper platoons modelled on the 40 Thieves. The recommendation noted that such platoons required Marines with initiative, adaptability, and willingness to operate independently without direct supervision. The recommendation did not specify recruiting from the brig. It also did not specify that such Marines should be encouraged to steal equipment when official supply channels failed. But everyone who read the recommendation understood the implications. Tachovsky survived the war. He left the Marine Corps in 1946 and returned to the United States. He settled in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, became involved in local politics, eventually became mayor. He lived to age 96. He died in 2011. He rarely spoke about Saipan during those 65 years. When asked, he would acknowledge that he had served in the Pacific, that he had commanded a scout sniper platoon, that his men had been effective. He would not elaborate. The details remained locked away. His son Joseph learned about the 40 Thieves only after attending his father's funeral. Sergeant Al Junker, then in his late 80s, approached Joseph and asked if he knew what his father had done on Saipan. Joseph said he did not. Junker told him about the stolen bazooka and the destroyed tank, and the 40 men whose lives Frank Tachovsky had saved on June 22nd, 1944. Joseph began researching. He contacted other surviving members of the 40 Thieves. He found 7 men still alive in 2011. Corporal Robert Gene Smots, the Osage hunter from Oklahoma, Marvin Strombo, Roscoe Mullins, Otto Hebel, others. He interviewed them. He discovered his father's footlocker in the attic, filled with platoon rosters, letters, photographs, medals Frank had never displayed. Joseph spent 9 years compiling the story. In 2020, he published a book with writer Cynthia Crack. The book was titled 40 Thieves on Saipan, the elite Marine scout snipers in one of World War II's bloodiest battles. 338 pages. The book documented everything: the brig recruitment, the silent killing training, the Garapan patrol, the Pololu ambush, the stolen bazooka, the destroyed tank, the Leatherneck article, the recommendation to create scout sniper platoons across all regiments. The book won the 2020 Best Book Award for Military History from American Book Fest. Half the royalties went to veterans organizations. The 40 Thieves had been forgotten for 76 years. Command had been embarrassed by the brig recruitment. The methods had been too unconventional. The theft had been too blatant. Better to let the story fade. Better to focus on conventional units with conventional tactics. But Joseph Tachovsky brought it back. He documented what his father had built: a platoon of Marines who had been rejected by the system, trained to kill in silence, equipped with stolen weapons, sent behind enemy lines to do work that no one else could do. They had succeeded. They had changed doctrine. They had proven that the Marines who ended up in the brig for winning fights were exactly the Marines who should be leading patrols. The M1A1 bazooka that destroyed the Type 95 Hago on June 22, 1944, was never returned to the Army Ordnance Depot. Tachovsky kept it through the rest of the Saipan campaign. When the 6th Marines redeployed after Saipan, the bazooka disappeared. No records indicate what happened to it. Most likely it was passed to another unit that needed it more than official supply channels could provide. Marine methods. Survival methods. The methods Frank Tachovsky had taught 40 criminals who became the most effective scout snipers in the Pacific Theater. The men command refused to honor publicly, but could not deny privately. The 40 thieves who stole what they needed and saved who they could and killed without mercy and asked for nothing except the chance to do it again.